Founder Stories, Mornington Peninsula. The founder stories behind the brands we know and love. I'm very lucky, actually. So welcome, Holly. I'm very lucky to say that in my marketing life, I have worked with you, and we are now sitting together here at this beautiful distillery on the Mornington Peninsula. You're my first guest on my podcast series, Founders Stories. You are a well-known venue on the Mornington Peninsula. I would say people travel down from Melbourne to come and see you. But what I find, and I have found in my marketing, is that there is so much in story behind the brand. And that's why I'm here today with you, is to ask, how is it that you got into distilling in the first place?
Yes, thank you, Sam, and thank you for inviting me here.
Of course.
Who would have thought all these years later, you and I sitting down together like this? How did I get into distilling?
How did you get into distilling? Yes.
Well, I never saw distilling as my path when I was younger. It was quite the surprise. It was actually my late father, Wayne, who started the distillery, our family distillery, in 2009. And when he told the family that he was starting a distillery, we almost all fell out of our chairs because Dad was never really even a drinker. I mean, he had a bottle of Bombay Sapphire in the freezer and that was about it. And then this kind of came out of nowhere. So
I never knew that.
Yeah.
He just came out of nowhere and went, I'm going to make spirits.
Yeah. Totally random, total surprise to all of us. Yeah. And I mean, he had obviously done a lot of thinking and a bit of research, and he'd obviously been thinking and planning for a little while, but he chose to share it with us when he kind of made the decision to step into it. And I guess the dream and the inspiration for him to establish a distillery on the Mornington Peninsula was well, my parents had a beach house down in Shoreham. Yep. And they would spend weekends down here. And Dad saw the opportunity on the Mornington Peninsula. Lots of wineries. Lots and lots of wineries, and the peninsula known for being a wine producing region. He saw an opportunity to add value to the local region in a different way. Yeah. Being turning wine into spirit. Yes. The peninsula, he didn't think needed another winery, but he was really excited about the concept of utilising local produce, distilling that and creating a local spirit, just like what they do in Europe. You know, you go to fruit-bearing regions and wine-producing regions, and often distilleries pop up where there is fruit to create a local spirit made from the local fruit. So these gins that are here and also behind us are made from the grape of the region? We mostly use some from the region, but we also source some from Central Victoria as well. Yeah. And we use a lot of local fruits as much as possible, you know, the local cherries and raspberries in the cerise gin and so forth. How fantastic. We'll have to have a try of them later. Yes. Love to. So I guess... where did your dad learn then the distilling process? How did he... So you said he had a dream. He knew that there was an opportunity down here. There absolutely is and was. I think he was a very smart man. But how did he then take the step into distilling? Yes. So I get asked this a lot, like, what did your dad do before he started Bass and Flinders? And well, he was in the army for 20 years, and then he was in protective armour wear. So nothing to do with distilling. Bit regimented, I guess, in his mindset, which always helps. But what he did was he connected with a distiller in South Africa, a master distiller, and our first still is actually manufactured in South Africa. And so when that still came over, he brought that master distiller over. Amazing. And that master distiller showed Dad how to distill and gave him that confidence. So, Dad learnt from reading a whole lot of books and learnt from this gentleman called Books Ventnor from South Africa. I didn't realise it was the South African opportunity. Do they have a lot of gins in South Africa? It's really interesting. South Africa is actually a really big brandy producer. Right. But you wouldn't know it because I think majority of the South African brandy gets consumed within South Africa. Right, yes. But and we might touch on it a bit later, when I went to Cognac and I did my internship over there, I did want to go to South Africa because, firstly, because our still's from there, but secondly, because South Africa is probably a lot more similar to the climate in Australia than France.
Yes.
And they actually use more similar grape varieties to us than what they do in France. So
Right.
more synergies there with South Africa.
Did you end up in South Africa?
I didn't. No.
You didn't? No. But I do remember from your career and us meeting, we worked together in corporate.
Yes.
And then we went our separate ways because I went off into my marketing world and you went off to Cognac, of all places.
I went off to Burgundy at that time.
Yes.
Because you and I weren't just in corporate, we were in corporate in the wine world.
Yes,
which
we
is
were.
so much more exciting. But yeah, interesting you asked that question because it was not long after that trip to Burgundy to do a vintage over there and did a bit of travel overseas. It was not long after that I came home and stepped into work with my dad. His health was starting to decline.
Right.
And I guess I want to step in and support my dad. And so, again, not having any background in distilling, but having my father's passion and my father's guidance, I learned pretty much everything from him and just kind of from following in his footsteps. And, you know, the challenging part, I guess, of working with family is when you ask them questions, they just say, oh, just cause Holly, just do it. That's how you do it.
Well, baptism by fire.
Just do it. So, I learned a lot from Dad, but then to go to the heartland of brandy production in Cognac and to be able to learn from those people and to be able to ask those same questions and actually get some beautiful technical answers.
Oh, absolutely.
Was great.
How long were you in Burgundy for?
Cognac or Burgundy?
Burgundy.
Burgundy.
Yeah,
I was
the
in
first
Burgundy.
stint
Yeah.
in Burgundy was...
I think it was a 10-day
Just
stint.
10 days?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you went back to Cognac?
Cognac wasn't really in my mind back then. Back then I was still in the wine world.
Yes.
And I still very much wanted to see where I could get to within the wine world. I guess maybe the similarities between where I came from and where I am now is, you know, the connection to the land, the connection to the region, and the storytelling behind the products and where the product comes from. That's probably that common thread, I suppose, between what I was doing prior in the wine world and then moving into the spirits world. Yeah.
So the storytelling component is something I myself am very interested in. Obviously, nothing is ever just as it seems. So there is blood, sweat and tears that go into distilling, wine for that matter, but then also the distilling process. But you mentioned also Wayne. He is no longer with us. Yeah. You lost him how many years ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. And you stepped into the role as head distiller. But you'd had that experience overseas, you felt confident enough. He just had an established brand by then, I'm assuming, and you were working as second to him and then he passed and you've now made your own way and have quite the selection. How do you feel as a woman in the distilling world? Is it common? I can't think off the top of my head of another woman in the distilling world. I've met a lot of men distillers, male distillers, and so do you know yourself?
Yeah, so I very recently just stepped down from the president role in the Australian Distillers Association and the first female president.
Yes, congratulations.
Well. Thank you.
Your term was 3 years?
3 year term,
3 years, yep.
But the stats were and still are that it's 40% of the spirits industry are women. When we talk spirits industry, we're not just talking distillers, though. We're talking kind of venues as well. So it's a little bit skewed. But 40% of the spirits industry, female, versus 20% in the wine industry versus 10% in the beer industry.
Right.
So it's pretty good. It's not perfect. It should be 50.
No, of
50%.
course.
But
we'll get there.
We'll get there.
We'll
get there.
Well, also you're setting the path as well, because once you have, and part of my storytelling series that I'm doing with people across the Mornington Peninsula is around that we are shifting the dial on things and not just female in a very male-centric profession, if I could say that, but also the fact that the Mornington Peninsula has such a unique environment down here, being so close to the ocean. We have that maritime climate. So when you have that involved in distilling, I guess there's going to be a very, very beautiful taste and flavour that you can use.
Yeah.
But within that, you're also setting the path yourself, this is something that I've always done with my family. I've travelled, I have learnt. I am now a head distiller in a very male-dominated industry. However, what's a day look like for Holly?
What does the day look like? Oh, that's a hard question because I reckon I've never had 2 days that are the same.
That's fantastic.
Which is great. I think getting up out of bed every morning. I don't always know how my day is going to pan out. I've got a few items at the top of the to-do list, but many different things will fly my way, I guess. So my role is managing director and head distiller. We've got a really small team though. So there's myself full-time. I've got a production manager, Dan, and a venue manager, Yvette, and we're the 3 full-timers. So amongst the 3 of us, we really are kind of running the business together. And so I guess my role encompasses in the production side, I look after the brandy, which is kind of my
specialty,
passion, my absolute passion. I love looking after the brandy. I love doing the blending. And new product development is kind of my role as well, just kind of keeping an eye on what's happening on the market and, coming up with fresh new ideas every now and then. And then there's all the business side of things, the HR, the legal, the finances, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
The less exciting stuff, I guess.
Less exciting stuff.
Yeah, the necessary but less exciting.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, because if I was to say to you, this is obviously a podcast around stories, and I've invited you along to talk about yourself in this male-dominated area. What would you say to a young woman coming up maybe behind you? Would you recommend becoming a distiller? What's the first step that you look back on and thought, that was really what fortified me, sorry for the pun, that fortified me in this industry or this section of the industry, which is very, very small. I think there's not many distillers down here on the peninsula. There's a few, and maybe that's growing. But as someone coming through, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think the thing that has always struck me about being in the industry is it is such a welcoming and inclusive industry. It's incredible how supportive everyone is, and it's why I love being part of the association, the industry association. Just last weekend, for instance, I went over to the Bellarine Peninsula, Bellarine Distillery. They invited Bass Flinders to join, even though it was called Whiskey by the Bay. We don't produce whiskey, but I'm good friends with the distiller over there, and he was like, "Oh, we should invite Bass Flinders. Why not bring some brandy amongst the whiskey, and why not ask Jimmy Rum while we're at it?" And I think that really speaks to the inclusivity. We're all friends.
Yes.
You would think, I guess, coming from a wine industry, or maybe the brewing industry as well. You would assume that if you're all making gin, you're all competitors, but we don't kind of see it that way. Yes, we're next to each other on shelf, and yes, we're sometimes vying for the same customers, but behind the scenes, we're all sharing our knowledge and how did you do the maturation? How did you do the filtration? Where are you sourcing your juniper from? Can I borrow some juniper? I've run out. It's so supportive. So I think female, male, it is a really inclusive industry. It's a very supportive industry. I got lifted up into the role of president for the Australian Distillers Association. And I think, in part it was probably because I was female, but also a younger generation. And I think that speaks volumes as well, to place a woman in that position.
Yep.
And, I said yes to that role because I wanted to show myself I could do something like that, but then show other women that they can do something like that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What an awesome story. But also, what's next then? I suppose you've just finished your term, 3 years as the president of the Distillers Association. You're head distiller here. What's next in your life? I suppose there is other things outside the distillery. Are you planning any more overseas trips to go and experience back to cognac? Do you think you would take your brand back to cognac to show this is what I...
Yeah, absolutely. I had such a special time in Cognac. You know, it was probably a once in a lifetime opportunity to go there, have an internship, 6 weeks of just focusing on something that I love, and not only that, be constantly engaging with others that also love what I love. You know, I think the thing that struck me about the local producers in Cognac, they're farmers, they're distillers, they're so down to earth. You would think that an Australian brandy producer going to Cognac and asking questions, they might just close their doors and turn me away. But they were so welcoming, and I think we both acknowledge that they're making cognac in France and I'm making brandy in Australia, and they're never going to be the same. No. Even if I tried to replicate their recipe 100%, it would taste totally different because the climate's different, the terroir is different. And I actually came home after that trip and I created a new product, our Mistel Rouge, and I sent a bottle to one of the distillers that I did the internship with. So, yeah, I think going back there and being surrounded by a whole city built around a beautiful spirit is so inspiring. And I can get so many ideas and inspiration and bring that home. So I think I'd love to make it a bit of a regular occurrence going back there, just kind of refreshing how I do things and
the cross-pollination. There's always something new. Is there many female distillers in France?
No.
I was going to say it's quite
definitely
traditional.
Not. Yes, it was very much passed down from father to son.
Yep.
It was very rare to find a female distiller over there. Yeah.
But also, I guess that's what's happened here. Your father has passed it down to you.
Yes.
And then who will you pass it to, potentially? Your family as you go?
Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. Is there other things behind the brand? So Bass and Flinders is your brand. We know a little bit more about Bass and Flinders now. We've talked about the brandy and also obviously the gin, which you are very well known for. What else is there? What makes Holly? Oh. What do you enjoy in your life? You obviously spend so much time in front of cameras, talking to people about liquor and a very specific area of that being gin and brandy, which I genuinely love again. But what is it is there something special behind? Tell me more about Holly. Anything at all. Straight off the cuff.
Oh gosh. About me, I guess, you know, I moved down to the Mornington Peninsula 4 years ago, and so before then I grew up in Melbourne, and I think I've slowly gravitated down to the Mornington Peninsula. You know, it was my dad that established the distillery here, and he then moved down here, and then my mum followed and my sister followed. I was the last to come down, and I feel so connected to the land down here because it's now my home. The distillery is my second home. The botanicals that we source, you know, we locally forage for kelp and samphire and saltbush for the maritime gin. What we do in the distilling industry is very much connected to the land. The grapes that we source to distill into our grape eau de vie, and that eau de vie is the base for our gin and our brandy. Very reliant on the elements and where that's sourced from. And then botanicals too, you know, botanicals are such a beautiful representative of where they're sourced from. And so I think what I guess I love about what I do and, you know, it's tying me to the land. And what I get to do is kind of draw on the land for inspiration to create new products. And that's eternally exciting to me.
Oh, very inspiring as well, because you're waiting for the environment to give you the idea and then you draw from the environment. And I think that speaks perfectly to what the Mornington Peninsula does and offers. We have so much beautiful, we have a beautiful community, you are correct. I have certainly felt even just getting my podcast together or my guests, people come together to collaborate. People are very, very supportive of one another, being down here on the Mornington Peninsula. And I'm loving hearing more around the founders and their stories and what makes them not only come down but stay and then build their businesses down here, which is extraordinary. And you are one of the most inspiring because you've achieved so much. You've been, as I said, you've finished up as the president, but now you're heading straight back into full-time distilling here at Bass and Flinders, and you're then going to draw from the environment and who knows what's next. It's very, very exciting.
It's exciting.
And I want to say thank you once again for your time.
Thank you.
And I look forward to tasting this afternoon.
Absolutely. Martinis all round.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thanks, Holly.